There was a stillness in the courtroom that didn't feel natural. Not the kind that comes from order or decorum, but the kind that hums just beneath the skin. A quiet tension where everyone's too afraid to breathe wrong. On that Wednesday morning in downtown Atlanta, the jury was back. The judge had returned to the bench, and the prosecution was practically grinning. After 12 long years, Darius Cole was about to be sentenced to death for a double homicide no one had dared question in a decade. Then the canine dog barked, and everything stopped. It wasn't just a bark. It was a deep, snarling roar from the chest of a black and tan German shepherd named Titan, a service canine stationed in the courtroom for security. Until that moment, Titan had been lying still at his handler's feet, eyes calm, demeanor watchful. But the moment the judge began to lift the sentencing papers, Titan stood, growled low, and lunged straight at the prosecution's table. People screamed. A juror dropped her pen. The bailiff rushed in, but Titan wasn't attacking. He was clawing furiously at the leather briefcase of District Attorney Charles Linford. And that's when the room really went silent. Titan had been assigned to the courthouse as part of a new federal pilot program. Retired from active duty, the K-9 was brought in for courtroom support, sniffing explosives, offering protection during high-profile trials, and, unofficially, easing public tensions by reminding people that justice sometimes has teeth. His handler, Officer Mike Haynes, had worked with Titan for 7 years, through 2 counties, multiple units, and 1 car crash that nearly ended both of their lives. Titan had found missing kids, uncovered bodies, sniffed out guns buried in swamp mud. But never, not once, had he reacted like this inside a courtroom. And certainly not like this. Titan's nails scraped violently at the side of Linford's case. The leather tore. Papers spilled out. Linford shouted something incoherent, reaching for the dog, only to be yanked back by Haynes. "Get him off my things!" Linford barked. "I think he smells something, sir," Haynes said tightly. Judge Patel, who'd maintained unshakable control through the entire 3-week trial, narrowed her eyes. "Mr. Haynes, secure your K-9 immediately." Titan snarled again. Then, just as quickly, he stopped and sat, his gaze locked on the bag, his ears perked. Not aggressive anymore, just insistent, focused, as if trying to say, "Here, look here." Now, Officer Haynes knelt beside the dog and carefully reached into the torn side pocket. And what he pulled out wasn't a legal pad, it wasn't case notes or a laptop charger, it was a small, zip-sealed evidence bag, yellowed slightly, labeled in faded handwriting, case number 041897, property of Atlanta PD Crime Scene Unit. Inside was a silver chain necklace, crusted in what appeared to be old blood. Everyone in that courtroom stopped breathing. Darius Cole didn't move. He had been motionless for most of the trial, hands cuffed, wrists resting on the table, dressed in a beige jumpsuit that said Fulton County Inmate. He was 36 now, convicted for a crime committed when he was 24. The prosecution had painted him as a street-level drug enforcer who snapped during a botched robbery and left 2 people dead. But there had always been something off about the case. Missing evidence, conflicting witness statements, the odd disappearance of a key forensic tech 2 days before the original trial. And now, the biggest missing piece of all, the chain necklace last seen on one of the victims, was sitting in an evidence bag no one knew existed, pulled from the briefcase of the lead prosecutor. Where did that come from? Judge Patel's voice cut through the room like glass. Linford stammered, I have no idea. That doesn't belong to me. I've never seen that item before in my life." Officer Haynes didn't look at him. "Ma'am, Titan alerted on this bag for a reason. If this is what I think it is, we've got a serious chain of custody problem." In the front row, Darius's mother broke down in tears. "If you believe dogs are just animals, This story might change your mind. If you believe justice always works the way it should, well, this canine dog might prove you wrong. Subscribe to the Heroes for Animals YouTube channel now so you don't miss what comes next in this unbelievable story of truth, loyalty, and one bark that changed everything. The courtroom recessed in chaos. Judge Patel ordered the evidence bag impounded. Officer Haynes and Titan were escorted into a secure interview room by Internal Affairs. Darius's defense attorney, a young woman named Claire Monroe, demanded an immediate stay of execution and filed a motion for mistrial within the hour. By noon, the chain had been scanned and tested. The blood on it was confirmed to match one of the victims, Emily Ruiz, aged 17, who was said to have fought her killer before her death. But that wasn't the real bombshell. The real shock came when they checked the custody logs. That evidence had been logged as destroyed, specifically in a storage warehouse fire that occurred in 2015. That fire had wiped out hundreds of archived case materials. Everyone assumed the necklace was lost forever. And yet, there it was, sitting quietly in the pocket of a district attorney who swore he had no idea how it got there. Back in his cell, Darius stared at the concrete wall, blinking slowly. "I told them I didn't do it," he said softly to Claire, who had rushed to see him that evening. "I've said it every year, every letter, every appeal. Nobody listened. But that dog, he listened." Claire, still in her heels and courtroom blazer, looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She placed her hand over his. "I don't know what Titan just saved you from," she said, "but this just became bigger than your case." Meanwhile, Linford had gone silent. No press, no statements. But Titan wasn't done. At 3:42 p.m., as Officer Haynes was preparing to take Titan out for a walk before shift's end, the canine suddenly jerked his head, ears snapping forward. He started barking again. Not at Linford's office, not at the evidence room, but at a locked janitor's closet just off the main corridor. When Haynes opened it, he found nothing unusual, at first. But Titan pushed past him, sniffed at the panel wall, and scratched. This time, there was a metallic clink behind the wall. Haynes called in backup. What they found inside the false panel would blow the case wide open. Officer Mike Haynes had seen some strange things in his 15 years on the force. But never in a million years did he think he'd be kneeling inside a janitor's closet at the Fulton County Courthouse, flashlight in hand, while his retired canine partner Titan clawed at a piece of drywall like his life depended on it. "Titan," he said quietly, "what the hell did you just find?" The scratching stopped. Titan stood still, nose pressed against a narrow vertical line in the paneling, his ears stiff and pointed, tail low and straight. That was his signal. There was something hidden. Mike stepped back and radioed it in. Within 10 minutes, a small team from courthouse security and internal affairs had joined him, along with Judge Patel herself, still wearing her robes. No one was taking any chances after what happened that morning in court. A maintenance crew removed the false panel carefully. The drywall had been resealed recently. Fresh compound, almost invisible to the naked eye. Behind it, a narrow cavity opened up, about 2 feet deep and 4 feet wide. Inside were 3 sealed plastic bins, stacked tightly, and each was labeled "Confidential, Case Evidence Hold." Judge Patel stared at the markings. Those look like original crime scene bins. Officer Haynes opened the top bin. Inside lay a bundle of evidence bags, old, brittle, yellow-tagged with faded barcodes. There were bloodied shirts, broken watches, a cell phone in a shattered case. Items that had been declared missing, compromised, or destroyed in various cases, including Darius Cole's. Everyone stood frozen. "This shouldn't exist," one of the IA investigators said quietly. And Titan, ever so calmly, lay down next to the open cavity and rested his head on his paws. Mission complete. It didn't take long for the news to spread. By that night, reporters were camped out on the courthouse steps. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a breaking headline: Secret cache of evidence found inside Fulton County Courthouse, linked to D.A. Linford's cases. Inside the DA's office, panic had begun to ripple. Charles Linford hadn't made a public statement since Titan uncovered the necklace in his briefcase. Now, with the discovery of the hidden bins, he was placed on immediate administrative leave. His personal assistant, a woman named Ellen Ray, was taken in for questioning. She cracked within an hour. According to the interview logs, Ellen admitted to helping Linford reorganize and archive older materials around 2016 after the warehouse fire that allegedly destroyed hundreds of unsolved case files. What she didn't know, until now, was that he had been hoarding physical evidence in a false wall inside the courthouse. "I thought it was just backups," she said. "He told me it was just old stuff that couldn't be filed again. I didn't think he'd use it." When asked if anyone else knew, she hesitated. "There's someone else," she whispered. "But I don't know his name. I only saw him once. A man in a blue suit, clean-shaven, tall. He met with Mr. Linford in that same janitor's closet. I thought it was weird, but I kept my head down." Back in his cell, Darius Cole sat across from his lawyer, Claire Monroe, eyes wide as she read through the developing news reports. "You seeing this?" she said, sliding her laptop across the table. He took a long look at the screen. "New evidence dump could affect more than 20 cases, sources say." "I don't know if I should cry," he said finally, "or be furious." Claire didn't smile. She looked exhausted. "The stay is holding, for now. Judge Patel's putting together an emergency hearing tomorrow to discuss the contents of the bins. If we're lucky, this won't just exonerate you. It'll burn down everything Linford built." "I told them," he muttered again. 12 years I told them." She leaned forward. "Darius, we're not done. The necklace was just the start. There's something bigger here, and I think Titan knows it." He blinked. "You trust a dog more than the system?" She didn't hesitate. "Right now, yeah. That dog is the only one who's been telling the truth." In the courthouse overnight, a second search began. Maintenance logs confirmed that the closet where the bins were found had not been listed for any structural repairs in over a decade. No renovations, no special entries. But surveillance footage from 2017 showed Linford accessing it after hours more than 30 times over 6 months. Internal Affairs was building a timeline. Each bin corresponded to a different criminal case. 3 of them had ended in death sentences. 5 had resulted in life without parole. 2 had been federal-level racketeering cases that mysteriously collapsed due to lost evidence. Now that evidence was back. The implications were massive. Officer Haynes sat with Titan in the courthouse parking lot around 11:30 that night. The dog was lying across the back seat of the cruiser, worn out, but content. Haynes rubbed behind his ear. "You old genius," he said. "You just brought the whole damn system to its knees." Titan gave a soft huff. For 7 years, Haynes had trusted this dog with his life. Through gunfire, smoke, hostage situations, but it wasn't until today, until that courtroom moment, that he realized how deep the bond ran. Titan had remembered the scent of that evidence. He'd never been assigned to Darius's original case, but he had been present at the crime scene of a connected robbery. Same year, same block, similar suspect. Somehow, somewhere in that incredible nose of his, Titan had stored the scent of the missing chain. And when he caught it again, in Linford's briefcase, he'd done what no one else had. He spoke, in his own way, and the world had no choice but to listen. The next morning, the emergency hearing was called to session. Darius was transported under heavy guard, but allowed to wear a suit instead of a jumpsuit. For the first time in over a decade, he walked into court not as a condemned man, but as a possible survivor of injustice. The courtroom was packed. Media crews filled the hallway. Protesters held signs outside. Judge Patel took the bench. "We are here to determine the legal standing of newly recovered physical evidence connected to case number 04-11897 and related matters," she said. We will begin with testimony from Officer Michael Haynes and his K-9 partner, Titan. Haynes took the stand, nervous but steady. He described Titan's alert. The briefcase, the bag, the hidden closet, every detail, every timestamp. Claire Monroe followed, submitting official complaints about withheld evidence, potential prosecutorial misconduct, and demanding Darius's conviction be vacated immediately. Then Linford's replacement, a newly assigned deputy DA, stood and delivered the line no one expected. "We do not oppose the motion." Gasps filled the room. Judge Patel banged her gavel. "The conviction of Darius Cole is hereby vacated pending further review. Mr. Cole, you are to be released on your own recognizance effective immediately." The courtroom exploded. Darius broke down sobbing. Claire hugged him so tightly he couldn't breathe. In the back of the courtroom, Titan barked once. Everyone turned to look, and in that moment, it was clear. Justice wasn't just served. It had growled its way into the light. But even as Darius walked out of the courthouse a free man, Claire wasn't celebrating just yet. She stepped into the hallway and made a call. "We need to talk," she said. "Linford didn't work alone. And if those bins are just the beginning, we might be looking at a corruption ring that goes way deeper than anyone thinks." On the other end, a quiet voice replied, "I've been waiting for this moment. I've got files you'll want to see. But you need to move fast. Someone's already watching." The old post office on Edgewood Avenue had long been abandoned, boarded up with plywood and graffiti, its brick walls crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. But at 7:42 p.m., as the sun dipped below the Atlanta skyline, Claire Monroe stood on its front steps, with her phone clutched tight and her breath held tighter. "Knock twice," the voice had told her earlier that afternoon. Then wait. She had barely slept since the courtroom victory. Darius was free, yes, but freedom didn't erase 12 years of chains. And it didn't erase the fact that someone inside the system had buried key evidence, manipulated trials, and hidden bins full of proof inside a courthouse wall. She needed answers. And according to the voice on the other end of that cryptic call, the first answers were inside this building. She knocked. Once, twice. The door creaked open. Inside, the smell of mildew and old paper was thick in the air. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering as Claire stepped into the narrow hallway. The man waiting at the end of it wore a faded Braves cap, dark hoodie, and jeans. His posture was hunched, his face shadowed. "Name's Ray," he said without offering a hand. "You're Monroe?" "Yes." He nodded toward a folding table in the middle of the room. On it sat 2 cardboard boxes, both taped shut, with DA Internal scribbled on the side in black Sharpie. "These came out of Linford's personal storage," Ray said. "Friend of mine in records tipped me off before they got locked down. I couldn't keep everything, just what I could carry." Claire opened the first box, and her heart nearly stopped. Inside were dozens of file folders, some labeled, others not. Trial transcripts, confidential informant lists, photos, unofficial witness statements. Some were from Darius's case, but others were from unrelated cases. Names she didn't recognize, dates that spanned more than 15 years. Some marked closed with no explanation. Others marked dismissed with initials beside them. "This is a vault," she whispered. Ray crossed his arms. "It's more than that. It's a kill list." Claire looked up. "What do you mean?" Ray leaned closer. "You're not the only lawyer that's had clients railroaded by Linford, but you are the first one to make enough noise to shake the damn building. These files, they're people Linford buried, folks who never stood a chance. And if you start pulling on this thread," his voice dropped to a whisper, "it won't just unravel his career. It'll pull down the whole damn department." Meanwhile, across town, Officer Mike Haynes was back at headquarters, filling out his 3rd incident report of the day. Titan lay at his feet, snoring gently. He glanced down and smiled. You causing more paperwork than any perp I ever chased." The smile faded as he remembered the hearing that morning. The way Titan barked at the back of the courtroom. Directed, not random. Focused on something, or someone. And that man, the tall guy in the navy suit sitting in the last row. He wasn't part of the press. Wasn't listed on the courtroom admittance sheet. Didn't speak to anyone. But when Titan barked, he left. Quickly. And when Haynes checked the security footage later, the man's face was just out of frame. Every time. It was bothering him. Bad. He opened a blank incident note and typed, "Unidentified male present during 8/14 hearing. Possible connection to Linford or hidden evidence cache. Potential threat." He saved it, just in case. By the next morning, the entire Atlanta DA's office was in quiet panic. 3 more defense attorneys had filed motions for case reviews tied to Charles Linford. The Georgia Innocence Project announced a formal review into his trial history. And behind closed doors, rumors of a federal investigation were swirling. Claire knew time was short. She'd spent the night scanning the files from Ray's boxes. One, in particular, stood out. Case number 072431. State ver Malik Patterson. Malik had been convicted in 2007 for the murder of a gas station clerk in East Point. Same judge, same prosecutor, same public defender that handled Darius's first appeal. But the forensics folder was almost empty. Only a single page remained, and it was stamped, "Do not copy." It detailed a DNA swab taken from the scene. That didn't match Malik. The sample had been flagged for further testing. But the follow-up? Never filed. The lab? Shut down. Claire ran her fingers down the edge of the paper, bile rising in her throat. Malik Patterson had been executed in 2018, and no one ever saw this page. Until now. She made a call. "Mike, it's Claire. I need a favor." Haynes answered mid-coffee. "Name it. I need you and Titan to meet me downtown. There's something we have to verify. And bring gloves." At the old East Point precinct, a station decommissioned 5 years ago, Claire used her legal badge to gain access to the sealed evidence room. A young city clerk unlocked the unit, curious but obedient. Inside, under layers of dust, she found the original box for Patterson's case. Titan was calm at first, sniffing, walking the perimeter. Then his ears perked. He stepped toward the back shelf, behind rows of rusted filing cabinets. He scratched, once, twice, then barked. Loud. Claire's pulse spiked. Haynes crouched beside Titan, shining his flashlight under the shelf. There, crammed behind a false panel in the floor, was a single envelope. Sealed. Unlabeled. Inside, a small glass vial wrapped in cloth. Blood sample, labeled ammo unknown. Number 072431. Claire swore under her breath. "They buried it." Haynes held up the vial. "You think this'll test?" "If it does," she said, "we'll have just proven a man was put to death on fake evidence." Back in her office, Claire called Darius. "I don't know how to say this," she began, "but your case isn't the only one." Darius, sitting on his mother's front porch with a cup of tea, nodded slowly. "I figured. Nothing about this ever felt personal. It felt systematic." It was. Claire told him about the files, the names, the patterns. Patterson. Then she paused. "Darius, I think Linford was just a piece of it." "You saying there's more?" "I'm saying someone helped him. Someone higher. Someone with access to evidence, judges, lab requests, maybe even jury pools." He sat in silence, staring out at the street. And then, softly, "So what do we do?" Claire didn't hesitate. "We blow it open." That night, as the city slept, someone else didn't. In a sleek black car parked 2 blocks from Claire's office, a man in a navy suit watched the lights go out. His face illuminated only by the blue glow of his tablet. On the screen, Claire Monroe, flagged. He pressed a button. A voice answered. "She's getting close." The voice on the other end was cold, controlled. "Then it's time to remind her what happens when you dig too deep." Claire Monroe had never liked being followed. It was a gut instinct, a tingling on the back of the neck, the way silence felt just a little too intentional. And over the last 2 days, that feeling had returned. Full force. Ever since the night she'd opened that sealed envelope from the old East Point precinct, she'd felt it. A low-grade hum of eyes on her, of shadows that moved a half-second too late. Her office door creaked when it hadn't before. Her front gate, which she always locked, had been ajar this morning. And now someone was watching her. She parked 2 blocks away from her usual coffee shop, left her car unlocked, windows cracked, keys nowhere near it. She walked fast, no headphones, pretending to be on a call. But her mind raced faster than her steps. If what she and Officer Haynes had uncovered was real, and she knew it was, it meant at least one executed man, Malik Patterson, had been wrongfully convicted based on evidence someone intentionally buried. And that meant someone powerful had a lot to lose if Claire kept digging. But the digging wasn't stopping. She'd already made digital copies of every file Ray had given her. She'd uploaded the DNA test request for the blood vial Titan had uncovered. She had a sworn affidavit from the clerk who helped her recover it. The dominoes were set. Now it was about keeping them from being knocked over the wrong way. Across town, Officer Haynes was sitting in a conference room with 2 federal agents and a representative from Georgia's Attorney General's office. Titan lay beside him, ears twitching every time the door opened. "I'm telling you," Haynes said, voice steady, "that dog found more evidence in 2 days than your whole department did in 10 years. One of the agents raised an eyebrow. "And you think this is part of something wider?" "I don't think I know." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were timelines, trial data, photos of the bins discovered behind the courthouse wall, case numbers, cross-references, all carefully documented, all connected back to Charles Linford. "You're looking at a pattern," Haynes continued. "A string of manipulated prosecutions, lost evidence that magically reappears. And at the center? Linford." But he wasn't acting alone. The AG rep frowned. "You have a name?" "No, but Titan does." They chuckled at first, until Haynes pulled out a screenshot. Surveillance footage. Courtroom hearing. Titan barking toward the back row. A man in a navy suit exiting before anyone else. Same man Claire saw near the old East Point station the day we recovered the blood sample. He's not in any court record. No name, no ID. But Titan reacted to him, same way he reacted to Linford's briefcase. The agent leaned forward. "You think the dog remembers his scent?" "I know he does." That evening, Claire sat with Darius Cole on his mother's porch, sipping sweet tea and listening to crickets fill the silence. "I don't know what happens next," Darius said, staring at the sidewalk. "Feels like I got dropped into someone else's story." "You didn't," Claire said. "You've just been stuck in the wrong chapter for 12 years. Darius smiled faintly. "You think we'll win?" Claire looked out toward the street. "I think we already are. But it's not about one win anymore. It's about how far this goes, and how many people got buried under bad paper and fake justice." He nodded. "I want to help." Claire glanced at him. "You serious?" "I got time. I know the system. I got a voice now. And maybe if I shout loud enough, someone else like me doesn't get put in a box." Claire smiled. "Then let's make some noise." Later that night, Titan stirred in his sleep. It wasn't unusual for him to dream. His legs would twitch, ears flick. Sometimes he'd huff like he was chasing something in the dark. But this night was different. He jolted upright, whined softly. Haynes looked up from his laptop. "What is it, boy?" Titan padded to the front door, growled low. Haynes stood, heart thumping. He checked the peephole. No one. He opened the door cautiously, hand on his holstered sidearm. Nothing on the porch, nothing on the lawn. Then he looked down. An envelope. No name, no markings. Just a plain white envelope sealed with clear tape. He brought it inside, laid it on the table. Titan sat beside him, watching. Haynes opened it. Inside was a single photo. Claire Monroe, taken from across the street. Below it, typed in blocky, cut-out letters from magazines. "She digs, she dies." Titan growled again, louder. And Haynes knew then, without a doubt, the shadow they'd all been feeling wasn't just paranoia. It was real, and it was coming. The next morning, Claire didn't go to her office. Instead, she met Haynes at a secure location arranged through a federal contact, an old off-grid ranger cabin north of Stone Mountain. No phones, no Wi-Fi, just paper, coffee, and a German shepherd who never blinked. Claire sat at the wooden table, looking at the photo. "I guess that's our answer," she muttered. Haynes nodded. "They know we're onto them. They're scared. They're dangerous." She looked up. "So what do we do?" He unzipped a duffel bag. Inside were case files, surveillance notes, the original affidavit from Ellen Ray, the chain Titan found. Everything they'd uncovered, duplicates, labeled, in order. "We go public," he said, "before they can silence us." Claire exhaled slowly and nodded. By noon the next day, the story had broken nationwide. A front-page feature on the Atlanta Journal-Constitution read, "Canine dog uncovers evidence in decade-old murder case. Wrongful conviction unraveled." CNN picked it up within hours. NPR followed. Social media lit up with hashtags. Justice for Darius Nader Titan, Kynes digging for truth. The Department of Justice formally announced a full federal investigation into Charles Linford's cases. And Claire? She stood in front of the courthouse with Darius at her side, Titan at her feet, and a dozen cameras pointed straight at her. "We didn't get lucky," she said, voice clear and strong. "We got loud, and we got honest. And when truth has teeth, lies start to bleed." Titan barked once. The crowd erupted. But across the city, in an unmarked office tucked between an old credit union and a vape shop, a man in a navy suit adjusted his cufflinks. Another man stepped into the room, holding a phone. "She's not backing down." The man in the suit smiled. "Then it is time we remind her who runs the courts." He pulled out a file. Claire Monroe's face was on the cover. Claire Monroe never thought she'd need personal security. But by the end of that week, she had 2 unmarked patrol cars rotating outside her home, her office calls monitored by the DOJ, and Titan sleeping at the foot of her bed like a silent sentry. She hadn't asked for a bodyguard, but Officer Mike Haynes and his canine partner had become one whether she liked it or not. The moment her photo and the death threat landed on her porch, everything changed. "You're not paranoid anymore," Haynes had told her. "You're a target." And Claire didn't argue. Not now. Not with what they were uncovering. Since the media storm erupted around Darius's release and the secret courthouse evidence vault, more than 17 new defense motions had flooded the Fulton County judicial system. And within 72 hours, 2 of those cases were already overturned. One of the men released had been 19 years old when he was arrested. Now, at 35, he stepped into the sunlight a free man, with no idea how to live in a world that had passed him by. But the darkest part, his case, just like Darius's, had been prosecuted by Charles Linford, and the key witness had mysteriously recanted, only to vanish 2 days before trial. Claire was drowning in files. She'd taken over an empty law office donated by a friend across town. No logos on the door, no sign on the building. Just her, a used coffee machine, and dozens of boxes of names. Men and women who had sat in prison, or still were in prison, based on cases that now reeked of manipulation. But something was missing. Patterns were emerging. Timelines were aligning. But the final connection, the person who had helped Linford hide all of this, was still a ghost. Until Titan found the note. It happened late one night. Claire had just wrapped up an interview with a man whose brother had died in lockup 2 years into a sentence he never should have served. She leaned back in her chair, drained, and let her eyes close for just a moment. Then she heard Titan growl. Low, short, focused. She sat upright. Titan was standing at the back corner of the room, nose pressed against the drywall. Mike Haynes, sitting across from her, dropped his coffee and rushed over. That's his alert stance. He got on one knee, ran his fingers along the baseboard, then stopped. There, taped beneath the corner shelf, was a manila envelope. No name. Inside, a handwritten note, shaky and rushed. Linford didn't work alone. Check sealed docket number 499B. Only one judge had access. Underneath that, a photocopy of a court order dated 8 years prior, signed by Judge Peter L. Warwick. Claire blinked. Warwick? He's retired. No, Haynes corrected. He's been elevated. He's now a Georgia Supreme Court justice. Her stomach turned. The next morning, Claire and Haynes met with 2 agents from the Department of Justice inside a secure office suite downtown. The photocopy was spread across the table between them. Docket 499B, one agent repeated, flipping through a digital archive. Sealed, not even flagged for public interest. It's connected to Linford, Claire said. I guarantee it. The second agent shook his head. If you're suggesting Warwick helped bury convictions— I'm not suggesting, Claire interrupted. I'm telling you. She leaned forward, voice calm but fierce. This is bigger than one rogue DA. Linford didn't just stash evidence in a closet. Someone gave him the cover to do it. A judge. A highly placed, respected judge who knew exactly how to manipulate dockets, approve dismissals, and keep things hidden under the radar. The agents exchanged a look. Then the older one nodded. I'll issue a subpoena for the sealed docket, but if Warwick's involved, it's going to get messy fast. Claire didn't flinch. Let it. Later that afternoon, Darius visited the office with 2 coffees and a folder in his hands. Figured you could use caffeine and a rabbit hole, he said with a crooked smile. Claire smirked. You're getting good at this. Turns out being angry and literate is a lethal combo. He handed her the folder. Inside were names, 5 in total, all young, all charged between 2011 and 2014, all represented by public defenders. All had one thing in common. Their judges were either Warwick or his closest circuit mentee. One of them, a woman named Tiana Graves, had been convicted on hearsay alone. Her appeal was denied in under 24 hours. Claire traced her finger over the name. She's still inside. Darius nodded. 11 years into a 15-year sentence. Drug charge. First offense. No priors. No real evidence. Claire stood up, heart racing. Then we start with her. That night, Claire received a message on her private line. No caller ID. Just a voice. You're playing with fire, Ms. Monroe. You think this is justice. But it's a suicide mission. Judges don't go down easy. They don't fall, they bury. Then the line went dead. Claire stared at her phone. Titan stood up from his place near the window. He was staring at the door. At 4:03 a.m., a fire alarm blared in the office building. Claire, Haynes, and Titan ran down the back stairwell into the alley. Smoke filled the second floor. Fire crews arrived within minutes. The fire was small, but suspicious. Fire marshals later reported the blaze began near the back storage cabinet, where Claire kept the original physical copies of the Warwick note and the Patterson evidence logs. Coincidence? Nobody believed that anymore. Claire sat on the curb, shoulders hunched, holding Titan's leash while firefighters poured water over scorched paper and blackened walls. This is war now, she muttered. Haynes sat beside her. So let's fight. By noon the next day, Claire called a press conference. Standing outside the Georgia state capitol, flanked by Darius, Haynes, and 2 of the newly freed men from Linford's past cases, she spoke into the mic with unwavering clarity. For over a decade, innocent people were sent to prison, or worse, because the people sworn to uphold justice used it as a weapon. And we now have reason to believe this corruption reached Georgia's highest bench. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned in. Claire held up the scorched corner of the Warwick court order, rescued from the fire. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. If the walls of justice are this rotten, then we will tear them down and build something better. Behind her, Titan barked. Loud, sharp, as if to say, try and stop us. But in a dark office high above the city, a man in a robe poured himself a drink. Peter Warwick stared out at the Atlanta skyline, his jaw tight. He'd worked too hard, climbed too far to fall now. "They're getting bold," he muttered. Across the room, another man, tall, silent, in a navy suit, watched without blinking. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Warwick's voice was calm, cold. "Let them dig. Let them scream. When it's time, cut off the oxygen. Judges don't get convicted, son. They get remembered." The day Claire Monroe walked into the Georgia Supreme Court, she didn't wear armor. She wore her truth. No makeup. No expensive blazer. Just a worn leather satchel, filled with documents no one ever expected to see again. And Titan at her side, tail low and alert, the way he always was when danger was close. The Capitol building loomed above her like an old wound that never healed. Marble floors, polished halls, and portraits of men who never lost a trial. But Claire wasn't here to win. She was here to expose. And with the nation watching, she was going to make sure the system finally looked in the mirror. The formal hearing was unprecedented. A judicial inquiry board had summoned Justice Peter L. Warwick, the same man who once presided over hundreds of state cases, the same man now accused of enabling prosecutorial misconduct, evidence suppression, and judicial tampering in at least 9 known convictions tied to Charles Linford. The board didn't call Warwick to testify. They called Claire, and she was ready. She stepped forward, laid her hand on the Bible, and took her oath with Titan quietly sitting beneath her feet. Cameras weren't allowed in the chamber, but reporters filled every bench outside. She began with Darius. She told them about the missing chain, the dog who sniffed it out, the evidence bins behind the wall, and the judge who waved everything through with a sealed docket and a silent pen. She gave them files, sworn statements, photocopies of shredded documents salvaged from the fire someone tried to use to erase the truth. Then she paused, and she said something no one expected. "I'm not here to destroy your court. I'm here to make it honest." Justice Warwick wasn't in the room, but his lawyer was. A thick man in an even thicker suit, who tried to dismiss every file as coincidental, every witness as misremembering, every case as legally resolved. Claire didn't argue with him. She let Titan do that. The moment the man tried to wave off the dog's alert in the courtroom years earlier as behavioral malfunction, Titan barked, loud, deep, piercing, and the room went still. Claire leaned into the mic. "You can deny people. You can deny files, but you can't deny instinct. And this dog knew the truth before anyone else dared speak it." Outside, Darius waited. He wasn't alone anymore. 5 other men, formerly incarcerated, recently exonerated, stood with him. One held a sign. Another had his daughter on his shoulders. All of them wore shirts that said, "Justice doesn't expire." Reporters asked questions, snapped photos, but Darius kept it simple. "We're not here for revenge," he said. "We're here so the next kid from the wrong neighborhood doesn't end up buried behind someone's promotion." Behind closed doors, the board deliberated for hours. Claire sat on a bench outside, Titan curled next to her. She didn't speak, didn't check her phone, just stared at the floor, remembering every broken voice on the other end of every prison phone call she'd ever taken. Every mother who said, "He didn't do it." Everyone who wasn't believed. At 6:14 p.m., the chamber doors opened. A clerk stepped out with a folded paper. The board had made a recommendation to the state assembly. Justice Warwick would be removed from the bench and referred for federal criminal investigation. Claire didn't smile. She just breathed. For the first time in years, it felt real. The fallout came fast. Within a week, Warwick resigned for health reasons. 2 more judges were named in the widening investigation. Charles Linford, already disbarred, was arrested under obstruction and conspiracy charges. 37 cases were formally reopened. 8 convictions vacated. 3 wrongful death settlements reached. And Titan? He received a medal? The ceremony was small, held in a city park under the Georgia sun. Children ran in circles. Music played through crackling speakers, and a crowd gathered as Officer Mike Haynes held the leash to the dog who started it all. Claire stood beside them as the mayor pinned a gold star to Titan's collar. "He didn't chase down a suspect," the mayor said. "He didn't leap through fire. But what he did do was listen. And that, my friends, saved lives." Titan wagged his tail once, then laid down like it was no big deal. Claire sat on the edge of the crowd later, feet in the grass, watching as a group of teenagers asked to pet Titan. He didn't move, just licked their hands and let them hug his thick neck. "Kind of a hero now," Haynes said, sitting beside her with a paper plate of BBQ. "He always was," Claire replied. "The rest of us just caught up." Haynes nodded. "You ever think you'd come this far?" Claire looked out at the crowd. The freedom, the kids, the dogs. "No," she said, "but I'm glad we did." That night, back at home, Claire tucked the original note that started it all, the one Titan led her to, into a frame. Next to it, she placed the newspaper clipping of Darius's release, and beside that, a photo of Titan, standing in front of the courthouse, mouth open, mid-bark, tail wagging. She hung it on her office wall with a single word written underneath: truth. We want to thank you for following this story all the way to the end. At Heroes for Animals, we believe that every voice matters, even when it comes from 4 legs and a bark that won't be ignored. Titan reminded us that sometimes the smallest sound in the courtroom can shake the largest lies. Now we ask you, what do you believe justice looks like? Is it a courtroom? A voice? A dog? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, please consider subscribing to Heroes for Animals to support real stories about incredible animals making a difference. Until next time, stay brave, stay loud, and always trust your instincts.